Senator Tim Murphy, author of The Angry Child, Regaining Control When Your Child is Out of Control. Why'd you write the book?
Well, as a psychologist, for many years I worked with families who had kids who were showing lots of signs of anger. And actually started writing this before I got into office, but with the demands of being a state senator, there's not much time to do much writing. And yet, when things were developing across the nation and across Pennsylvania, with school shootings, with concerns about violence and school safety, many folks would call upon us as legislators and say, do something. My feeling was, and the more I explored this, the more I was convinced of this, that the answers to this don't really lie in the State House as much as they lie in all of our houses. That parents can be doing a lot more, and when you look behind any of these instances of the problems that kids have in school, very often you're seeing things at home. So what do? Do we as legislators pass more laws and restrict this or plan that, or more metal detectors, more programs? In some cases, there's some things we can do, but that only takes care of the tip of the iceberg. The kids who have the violent tendencies are a very small fraction. On any one day in America when some child is involved with a violent act, there's 25 million other kids that are not. But the thing that I saw growing for so many of our youth was the issue of anger. And that comes out in many ways. The most visible way it may come out are the issues of a child who physically fights or threatens or punches doors or kicks holes in walls or intimidates their family so they're really held as emotional hostage. And by the way, the school may or may not ever see that child, that sign of the child, because they can disguise it and look pretty nice at school. But it can also come out in some ways as a real passive-aggressive, non-cooperative child, the child who vandalizes things secretly, the child who can, whether at home or in the school or somewhere else, put viruses in computers, do things out in public in a way that they're not really seen, the kid who forgets what parents tell them to do and it leads to family problems. The anger can come out in lots of different directions. And what I found is just so many families just didn't know what to do. Or when I would work with them in my practice and make suggestions, and I found over time that a number of characteristics of these kids I saw repeatedly, and so I identified those, and even helping parents understand what is anger, what are its stages, and what can you do about it. So shaped that into a book, and with my co-author, Loriann Oberlin, who helped me shape a manuscript into something that was then presentable. The rest is there, it just came out.
Is it your first book?
My first book, yes.
This is with, the publisher is Potter, which is a division of Random House.
Right,
So
Clarkson Potter.
How did you manage to get a big-time publisher like that?
Well, actually, when we wrote up the manuscript and I showed it to my co-author, she said, you know, you've got a book here. And I said, I hope so. And she helped me put it together with to our agent, Jeff Herman, who's done a number of books. And actually, within a few weeks, we had offers from Simon & Schuster and Random House and a couple other big houses. And so one of my sense is that they recognize that this is a problem of grave concern across the country, that I'm sure that there are the number of kids out there that parents are concerned about this is in the several hundred thousands, if not over a million or two, of kids and parents who recognize this problem. You figure 1 out of 5 children throughout their life will suffer from some significant disorder, oftentimes depression. A lot of times even depression comes in the form of acting out in anger and rage and attacking parents or problems at school. Plus, there's a heck of a lot of kids out there who have a lot of anger just as a part of their normal development, and many times parents are searching for ways of understanding how do you deal with this. And so this book does not just take care of giving parents advice for the children who are the extremes, but a lot of those other issues that parents deal with, like tantrums and refusal to do their homework or their jobs, or threatening back, those things that parents will see a lot, whether you're talking about preschoolers or teenagers. And so that's where I guess the publishing houses thought, as I thought, that there's enough families out there who need this help.
I want to start off at the beginning where you define anger. For the purposes of this book, you say, your definition is a powerful response triggered by another negative emotion that results in an attack of variable intensity that is not always appropriate. First of all, are there times when anger is appropriate?
Well, I think there's times when someone is purposely trying to hurt you or intimidate you, and a person reaches a point where an angry response may be appropriate. And I'm not saying losing control, because one of the things we say throughout the book is it's sometimes okay to be angry, but it's never okay to be mean. So if a child is being picked on and picked on and picked on and teased and victimized by peers, at some point for that child to stand up and say, I'm mad as heck and I'm not going to take it anymore, I think is appropriate. For that child then to lash out and try and harm those kids physically, you know, with some weapon or something, that's when it goes into the other realm where it's not appropriate. But that's an important thing we need to understand. Now, the reason it's important to understand that is sometimes we, and then psychologists have come out too often saying, well, you know, if you feel a feeling, you should express it, and if you feel anger, it's okay. But that means a lot of times it is not.
And the other part of your definition is, you say, triggered by another negative emotion. What do you mean?
That is an extremely important part of the whole book here. When we are trying to deal with someone's anger, and maybe it's someone who, you know, cut you off in traffic, maybe it's, maybe you're a clerk in a store and you happen to have made a mistake on change and someone starts yelling at you, maybe it's a spouse who's mad you're late for dinner, or a sibling is upset that you took their toy. If you only deal with the anger, all you can do is argue and fight. But behind anger is another emotion that triggers it. And that can be loneliness, it can be sorrow, it can be hurt, emotional hurt or physical hurt. It can be fatigue or hunger or physical needs. A cranky kid that just needs to get something to eat. The kid who's been shopping all day with parents and just needs to get home and rest and not continue to go through the mall, drag through. And the reason that's so important, that if you only respond, as I said, to the anger, you fight. But if the parent recognizes that Johnny's come home and he did not get invited to the party he wanted to get to with his friends, or he didn't make the softball team he hoped to make, or you know, Mary didn't make the cheerleading team, whatever that is, that other feelings of hurt or jealousy or loneliness may be part of that. And if the parent hones in on that, rather than saying, you know, I don't know what happened to you in school, but quit giving us that attitude, go to your room until you can get better, the parent who can calm down and say, something's wrong here. What happened? Are you okay? Let's sit down and talk. Even if the kid's in a bad mood and wants to slam doors and says, no, I'm not going to talk about it, it's better if the parent understands there's something else triggering this, and I need to help my child understand that other emotion and hone in on that one and respond to that one, rather than just deal with a surface fight.
How long have you been a child psychologist?
Oh, it's a long time now. Been at it for some 25 years, I guess.
Do you have a practice now?
A little practice. Since I've been a senator, it's gone from a full-time to just a couple hours a week. Saturday mornings when I don't have a parade or a community day or something to go to. But it is very valuable to have a few patients, and I think it helps make me a better senator, more responsive when one still is seeing some folks one-on-one for some of those issues.
In the years you've been practicing, have you seen changes in the types of problems kids have and parents have with their kids?
I think so, and I think it part comes because we are better at diagnosing children's problems, and I think part comes because I think there are some changes in the way kids are behaving. I think there is an increase in lack of respect, in a willingness to be sarcastic, to challenge parents, to say no, and for parents, as a generation has grown up, to have a hard time saying no to their children, to think that such things as respect for teachers and parents is something one does not have to demand. You walk into a school 20, 25 years ago, you would still see kids, yeah, they would cause some trouble, and yes, they didn't do their homework, or they would cut class and those things, sure. But to see kids openly challenging teachers, yelling at them, saying, you can't make me, or my parents will get you for this, and indeed having the parents call the school and say, why are you picking on my son? What did he do? That is a change, a social change in what's happened. And I think that what is before, what was seen as aberrant is now seen as tolerable. Before, if a child even looked wrong at a teacher or said no to them, they would find themselves in detention, and when they got home, their parents would give them extra punishment. Now it's, for so many kids, it's seen as a typical kind of thing. It's modeled in their lives, they see it in other TV shows, it's part of the comedy you see in every movie or TV show the kids have, and the music. Now I'm saying the whole media has made it this way, but I think you've just seen this shift in what we tolerate in children, instead of saying that things like dignity and respect and patriotism are all important things. Let those things slide.
A lot of the people who are parents now were children of the 60s.
That's right.
Did they parent differently now than their parents did? I mean, how much of their parenting skills did they learn from their parents, and how much is a result of when they were children of the 60s?
Well, the parents who were parenting in the 60s were learning from the Dr. Spock generation, who was the one that really pushed parents to start listening to kids, being a little easier on them, don't spank them, think of other disciplines. And that was a time, however, when a lot of families were transitioning. But what else was happening, you still had a lot more intact families. Back in 1962 or 63, it was Daniel Patrick Moynihan that talked about the crisis in the African-American community, that 23% were single parents. Now in some areas it's 75%. You have, among every racial group, you have those sort of changing demographics where the nuclear family is split up, the extended family may be in multiple states. You don't have that same kind of supervisory, watchful eye over kids. You know, stories that I think many of us can remember. If you walked down the street and you did something wrong, your neighbor would call your parents and say, hey, I just saw Ben down the street and, you know, he was doing this and this. Now, people don't know each other. It's not the same kind of connect in communities, and that then puts more pressure on parents to make these decisions on how much we monitor our children.
Are there specific things you can point to that are the kind of the upshots of the fact that the divorce rate is what it is today as opposed to what it was a generation ago?
Well, I mean, some people look at some legal aspects that occurred, such as when no-fault marriages occurred, you saw a big jump. But that may have also meant there was a lot of people living in miserable relationships before. The question is, have we somehow taught people that relationships are disposable and that commitment is not a full-time, full life thing, that you're committed until you change your mind? And I think along those lines, what people have done socially in their own hearts have looked for loopholes in the system that otherwise would have kept them and said, we have to find a way of working this out. But I'm not advocating people stay in relationships that are harmful or hurtful or miserable. But it's just one of those things. I think we've inched towards these problems so much so that we haven't seen them happening until they're upon us.
When people, a couple who's having a problem, say, let's stay together for the kids, have you seen that situation be beneficial or harmful?
In both ways, both beneficial and harmful. I mean, some kids wish their parents had stayed together for them. And sometimes when parents do that, they find over time they can still work out difficulties. I mean, every marriage has its fights and problems. There was a great line in Brokaw's book, The Greatest Generation, where he was talking with some gentleman and said, do you guys ever think of getting divorced? And I'm not sure if the husband or wife said, we've never thought about getting divorced. We have thought about killing each other, but we never thought about getting a divorce. For kids who are in homes where there is abuse, where there's spousal abuse, where there's child abuse, where there's intense arguing, under those circumstances, one shouldn't necessarily stay there for the kids because there's just hurt and harm and destruction taking place. It's a question that every parent who's struggling needs to ask themselves, what effect does it have on the children if we leave? What effect does it have on the children if we stay? I've seen some families who said, let's split up for the sake of the children, and then continue to hurt each other's lives through custody battles. I mean, the bottom line comes for any family, whether you are split as parents or you're together. You got to ask yourself, do you love the children more than you hate each other? And or dislike each other. And if that's the case, things will improve and parents can take care of some of their difficulties with each other and be able to shift from husband and wife into mother and father modes. But that's going to take some work. If they fail to do that, then you're going to see more of a catalyst that's going to bring up more anger in children.
Are there more people or families go to child psychologists now than when you started your practice?
To be honest, I don't know the statistics on that, but all along I have seen families along with children. I think it's much more socially acceptable now for families to do that because for some time, and even now, there's the prejudice against seeing the shrink, and that is unfortunate because it keeps families from seeking help. Sometimes you see that on sitcoms on TV where they make fun of going to the counselor. Movies disparage what happens in the therapy relationship. And that's unfortunate because I think it makes people worry about what happens. But overall, I think people are more accepting of it. We have changed a lot in how we deal with children. When you look back a century ago, the Sigmund Freud approach was you have to sit and talk about all your problems, and people think, well, if kids can't talk about their problems, what do? Well, we let them play and hope that something significant comes out week after week after week after week. And then now and then something will happen. Well, we really know, and I've always believed with children, you're much better off guiding them, directing them, asking them, helping to find out the issues, but more so working with the parents, because they're with the child all the other hundreds of hours a week. Why not work with them and find out what they can change and do differently?